Ralph Waldo Emerson, one of America's most enduring philosophers and essayists, left behind a rich legacy of thought that continues to influence writers, thinkers, and spiritual seekers. Like many great minds, Emerson had both admirable traits and human flaws. Understanding both gives us a more complete picture of who he was, not just as a thinker, but as a man navigating the personal and cultural challenges of his time. One of Emerson's most celebrated qualities was his role as a deep thinker and visionary. As a pioneer of Transcendentalism, he believed that true understanding and knowledge came not from books or institutions, but from within the self. His famous essay Self-Reliance laid out this idea with bold conviction, encouraging individuals to trust their own intuition rather than defer to external authority. Emerson's ideas were radical for his time, challenging a society that often valued conformity over individual thought. He promoted a view of the universe where everything is interconnected, and the divine could be found in nature and the human soul. A highly disciplined writer and speaker, Emerson committed himself to the craft of writing with remarkable dedication. He was a prolific journal keeper, writing daily for much of his life. These journals became the foundation for many of his essays and lectures. Through his carefully chosen words, Emerson was able to inspire generations of readers and listeners. His style, though often poetic and abstract, was filled with clarity of vision and a spiritual urgency that resonated deeply. Emerson believed in the power of words to shape the mind and spirit, and his lifelong commitment to writing proved his faith in that power. Perhaps one of his most defining traits was his fierce independence as a thinker. Emerson did not shy away from criticizing established norms. He openly broke away from the Unitarian Church, questioning the rituals and doctrines that he felt no longer served the individual's direct relationship with the divine. He urged people to think for themselves and not to rely blindly on tradition, religion, or government. This radical independence inspired many, especially in a young America grappling with its identity. Emerson's insistence on self-trust and personal authenticity became central themes in American philosophy and literature. His deep love of nature was another characteristic that grounded Emerson's life and work. For him, nature was not just scenery, it was a living, breathing manifestation of the divine. He found spiritual renewal in the woods and meadows near his home in Concord, Massachusetts. Nature was his church, his temple, and his teacher. Emerson wrote passionately about how nature could awaken the soul and connect individuals to something greater than themselves. He believed that through communion with nature, one could gain insight into universal truths. Emerson was also a generous and supportive mentor to other thinkers and writers. He offered encouragement to young authors such as Henry David Thoreau, whose own philosophy was greatly shaped by Emerson's guidance. Walt Whitman, another literary giant, received a much-needed boost from Emerson's praise early in his career. Emerson opened doors for others, not just through introductions or financial support, but by believing in their potential and urging them to trust in their own unique voices. However, Emerson's life and work were not without limitations. One criticism frequently directed at him is that his writing could be overly abstract and elitist. While his poetic language and lofty ideals captivated some, they also alienated others who found them inaccessible or impractical. For readers seeking direct answers or concrete strategies for social change, Emerson's emphasis on the individual's soul and intuition might have seemed disconnected from the realities of everyday life. Another criticism is that Emerson was somewhat detached from the pressing social realities of his time. Though he eventually became more vocal against slavery, he was initially slow to join the abolitionist movement. His tendency to focus on the inner life and individual transformation sometimes left him at a distance from direct political activism. Critics have argued that Emerson's reluctance to engage deeply with social justice issues limited the potential of his philosophy to affect real-world change during urgent historical moments. Emotionally, Emerson could also be quite reserved. The early death of his first wife, Ellen, left him deeply wounded, and the later death of his young son, Waldo, had a profound impact on him. Rather than expressing his grief openly, Emerson withdrew emotionally, which affected some of his personal relationships. This emotional distance also appears in his writings, which, while intellectually rich, can sometimes feel emotionally aloof or restrained. His tendency to intellectualize suffering rather than fully express it made him appear detached to some of his contemporaries. Emerson's rejection of organized religion was another controversial aspect of his character. While his spiritual philosophy attracted many who were disillusioned with traditional religious institutions, it also alienated those who found comfort in communal worship and established doctrine. By stepping away from the pulpit and promoting a more individualized form of spirituality, Emerson broke with many of his peers and risked professional and personal isolation. His 1838 Harvard Divinity School address, in which he questioned the very foundation of Christian doctrine, was considered scandalous and led to his effective ban from speaking at Harvard for decades. Some critics also point out that Emerson often revisited the same ideas throughout his career. Themes like self-reliance, the oversoul, and the divine presence in nature appear again and again in slightly varied forms. While this repetition helped to reinforce his core message, it also led some to view his work as lacking in development or diversity. At times, his essays seem more like meditations on the same central truth rather than explorations of new ground. Despite these limitations, Emerson's influence is undeniable. His call to trust thyself remains one of the most powerful messages in American literature and philosophy. He championed the idea that every individual carries within them the seed of greatness, and that by listening to one's inner voice, a person could lead a truly authentic life. His work challenged readers to look inward, to question norms, and to find the courage to live according to their own values. His emphasis on intuition and inner knowing resonated with the American spirit of independence and self-determination. Emerson's vision of a world in which every person had access to truth through their own experience helped lay the intellectual foundation for movements in personal development, spirituality, and even democratic governance. By insisting on the dignity and worth of the individual, Emerson gave voice to a uniquely American form of idealism, one that persists today in various forms. At the same time, the limitations of his approach remind us that philosophy must be balanced with action. Emerson's inward-looking focus, while transformative on a personal level, may not always address collective struggles or systemic injustices. His work is most powerful when paired with engagement, when the insights drawn from nature and solitude are brought back into the world through compassionate action and social responsibility. In conclusion, Ralph Waldo Emerson was a brilliant but complex figure. His strengths, visionary thinking, literary discipline, love of nature, and encouragement of others made him a beacon for many. His limitations, emotional reserve, abstraction, reluctance toward activism, and repeated themes ground him in the reality of being human. To truly appreciate Emerson is to hold both sides of him with respect. He was not perfect, nor did he try to be. What he offered instead was a lens through which we could see ourselves more clearly, and perhaps become better versions of who we are meant to be. His life and legacy continued to invite us into that deeper journey, one where the soul leads, nature teaches, and truth is found not in noise, but in the quiet voice within. Emerson reminds us that in listening to that voice, we don't just discover philosophy, we discover ourselves.